welcome to our Next Women Health Series for Women Who Win in collaboration with the Indian Medical Association of New England. I'm your moderator. My name is Deepa Javeri, and I work at Boston Medical Center, Roslindale and South Boston, and also Leahy Outpatient Center in Danvers. I'm a podiatrist. Our topic today is gynecology through the ages, and our guest today is Staci Tanouye. Staci is a Mayo board certified gynecologist, and she's in private practice in Jacksonville, Florida. Welcome, Staci.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. So we're going to jump right into it. We'd love to start with, I guess, the very beginning. When should women, girls, start their first sort of official gynecological exam?
Yes, this is a super common question. Everyone asks this question, especially all my patients who say, when should I bring my daughters in to come see you? The official answer is that the American College of OB/GYN recommends the first GYN visit be between the ages of 13 and 15, which I think becomes as a big surprise to a lot of people. And what people need to understand is that this is not necessarily to have any sort of exam or invasive exam or even getting undressed. This is mostly appointments to establish a relationship, to talk about normal bodies, to answer questions about just puberty and bodies and menstrual cycles and anything that may come up. So if you establish a relationship early on and continue that relationship, when you actually come to the point when you do need that kind of intimidating pelvic exam, everyone feels much more comfortable with the relationship to begin with. So yes, 13 to 15, and that's just to establish a relationship and start talking about normal things, questions.
Mm-hmm. And so when they come in between 13 and 15, when is the actual first sort of invasive exam or a pap smear, things like that?
Yeah, I think it varies a little bit. Officially, no one necessarily has to have a pelvic exam until age 21, because in the US, age 21 is the age when we recommend people with uteruses, cervices, and vaginas to have pap smear screening, regardless of if they've been sexually active or not. Sometimes you may need a pelvic exam prior to that if there's some sort of problem that we're investigating and we feel like we need to have that sort of information. But especially for people who may be intimidated by the exam, we do try to keep that in mind and potentially keep that off the table for as long as possible, because we know it's a really intimidating thing. So really the official recommendation is 21 when pap smear screening starts. And prior to that, it's only based on absolute necessity.
Mm-hmm. And so as, you know, as girls start growing and they, you know, at various ages, I guess in this generation become sexually active, when do you talk about sexually transmitted diseases, contraception? When do you have those conversations, and when do you encourage people to start talking about it at home?
Yeah.
And when do you recommend talking about it with you? Yeah.
Great question. And I think these are such taboo topics. And so starting these conversations kind of as early as possible is really ideal, because you want people to feel comfortable coming with questions, because the more comfortable they're coming, the more comfortable they are asking those questions, the safer they will be. So the earlier we can start education for both young men and young women, the safer overall everyone will be in the end in terms of pregnancy prevention, in terms of lower STD rates. We know that comprehensive sex education from a young age, even early childhood, has proven to show that people who have comprehensive sexual education from early on have lower STI rates, have lower teen pregnancy rates, have a later age at first intercourse. And so it just tends to be a safer and more comfortable environment for everyone. So I encourage starting those conversations as early as possible. And certainly that's part of the reason why we recommend people coming in to see us from ages 13 to 15, because it is starting all of those private conversations, getting someone comfortable asking those questions, just talking about sexually transmitted infections in general, talking about bodies in general, talking about sex in general. Removing the stigma really does keep people safer and healthier. So the more we can get comfortable doing that, the earlier we can do that, the better everyone will be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. The taboo topic and the uncomfortableness. I know some schools do, do the videos. I know I have daughters, and I've heard through them that they, how useful do you find those? Or do you feel that they really need to have an in-person conversation, or do those even scare the kids even more?
Definitely in person. I mean, really, all comprehensive means sex education coming from all aspects. So coming from the home, from the parents, coming from the community, coming from the education system, sometimes even coming from religious institutions, but really coming from all aspects of the community and care. And so the more young people can get these messages from multiple different modalities. Thank you, sweetheart. The more people can get these from multiple modalities, the better and more comfortable they will feel. This is my child.
Hello, child.
Because this is my youngest, because my husband is not home yet. So
No worries.
Can you go sit with your brother? Yeah. No, we're not going to eat popcorn right now. We need to go watch your TV show. Do you want to sit with me? Okay, I'm going to keep talking, okay? So for example, with younger children, even he is almost 3 and my older son is almost 6, we use anatomical terms with our children. So my 3 and 6-year-olds know the term penis, they know the term vagina, and they know the term vulva, and they use these terms appropriately. And so part of that is taking off the stigma and shame of some of that, so they can ask questions, they can feel comfortable. We talk about private parts being private, but we want to also keep that conversation in the open. So we are very comfortable with bodies and terminology in our house, and we start from his age. So
wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That really is. And that actually reminds me, I love how you do the educational videos on Instagram and on TikTok, and I've seen some of them, and it's amazing what you've done to help lift the taboo off these topics and just, talk about it. I mean, everyone goes through these things, everyone has these body parts, and, it's, so I love that.
Yes, and TikTok has been a wonderful avenue for that because it is a younger demographic, a demographic who needs this information and who really, really wants this information. And so it's important for us as practitioners, as physicians, to be in those spaces to give people the reliable information that they're out there actively looking for.
Right, and the right information, not hearsay,
right.
not, things that you have.
Right, yes.
Yeah. And so you would recommend, because I know they see their primary care, their pediatrician every year. So you would say between 13 and 15, they should make an appointment with a gynecologist as well, just to clarify. Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. What are some of the common conditions that you see in sort of the next age group, or transitioning into the next age group between 18 and maybe 30s? What are some of the common things you talk about? What are some of the common conditions you see?
Yeah, I think that, ages, the 20s to 30s is an interesting sort of kind of dichotomy, right? 20s to 30s is all about family planning, and it's the juxtaposition between contraception and pregnancy prevention, and then actually planning out a family and fertility questions. And so it's kind of the balance between the two and how people shift from one focus to the other focus. And so 20s and 30s tend to be very much about surrounding those topics.
And what are some of the things that you see commonly in your practice as far as what kind of questions patients come up with, some of the issues they discuss? Because as women are more and more following their careers, they're getting married later, they're having children later. How does that affect the planning in that age group?
Yeah, I think that the first question, like I said, the first part of it is contraception. And so it's the question of what is best for me, what is right for me, and it's going over every single option out there, the risks, the benefits, and what might fit best into each person's lifestyle. And then we transition, like you said, so many women out there and people out there are focusing on careers and focusing on education and then transitioning into the professional world and wanting to put their families off a little bit longer. And that's where the fertility question comes into play. It's a really tough question, and it's a conversation that us as gynecologists should be having early on with our patients, not necessarily to push people to make a decision, but just to get people to start thinking about it. Because like you said, fertility declines every single year. And there's no magic age to where it really starts declining. Every single year as we get older, our fertility is declining and our ability to get pregnant is getting smaller and smaller, little bit every sort of year. Once you hit age 35, that decline accelerates a little bit. So the urgency becomes even more apparent. But it is important to know that even from your 20s, you start just kind of ticking down every single year. And so those conversations just about, keep this in mind, think about this, think about options and where you're at in your life and what your plans are for your life. And so people don't come up later on, even in their early to mid 30s, and are surprised if they're really struggling to get pregnant or to conceive. It's a very difficult, I think, like I said, juxtaposition between that transition of I'm trying so hard to prevent pregnancy because I've got all of this other stuff in my life to accomplish. Right. And all of a sudden transitioning to I'm going to get pregnant and I have to get pregnant right now. And it's a very, stressful time in people's lives, because that switch is very hard to make emotionally, mentally, and physically too.
Absolutely. Been there, done that. I'm so happy
Yes.
to be on the other side.
Yes, it's really an interesting sort of, transition in that time period.
Right. Which also leads me to the question of at what age is it considered now a high-risk pregnancy?
So I think that's a really great question. And it's a question we get all the time. In obstetrics, the definition of advanced maternal age is 35 and older. We know that as you get older, there's some risks that start increasing and creeping up. Increased risk of things like gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, and hypertensive disorders in pregnancy, amongst other things. But these risks are still relatively small and they increase very, very slowly. So although there's some extra things that we talk about doing during pregnancy for women who are 35 and older, the definition of high risk versus low risk is a little relative in there too, because it's a big spectrum. So just because you turn 35 doesn't automatically make you super high risk. There are certain risks that we talk about and there are certain things that we do, but you can still have a very low risk pregnancy in a very normal course. So again, it's thinking of that kind of high risk as a spectrum of risk, and there's multiple factors that go into that.
Right. And so in that same age group, what kind of sort of disorders, cancers, what kind of screenings do you recommend and, that most practitioners would suggest in that age group?
Yep. So cervical cancer screening comes in the form of Pap smear and HPV or human papillomavirus screening. Again, that starts at age 21 and continues every 3 to 5 years, depending on age and what kind of testing is done, up until you're at least 65. And so that's screening for the precancerous and the cancerous lesions of the cervix. The next type of cancer screening that we do starts at age 40, which is breast cancer screening. And for the American College of OBGYN, we actually recommend mammograms every single year. And I know there's some differing opinions from the various medical societies that are out there, but ACOG does say every single year starting from age 40 is our recommendations. And so those are kind of the two biggest cancer screenings that we're thinking about during those age groups.
Great. And then moving on to the 40s and above, the favorite topic at that age, which is on almost everyone's mind all the time, is sort of perimenopause and what, the aspects of mood swings, of weight gain, and all of that.
Yeah.
Very broad topic, but if you can Yeah, touch on key things. Yes.
Yes, I think, we in women's health and people with uteruses and ovaries, it just, every topic just becomes more and more taboo, right? No one wants to talk about sex. No one wants to talk about STIs. No one wants to talk about women's bodies, and no one wants to talk about perimenopause and menopause. These are all super taboo topics. So again, talking about them always helps. But perimenopause is the time period leading up to menopause, which is the cessation of periods and the decrease and decline of estrogen and progesterone in the body. And average age of menopause, where periods have stopped for at least 12 months consecutively, is 51. But perimenopause occurs from anywhere from 4 to 7 years prior to that. And so average age of perimenopause starting is somewhere kind of mid 40s. And we get into the very classic symptoms of developing small hot flashes, sweating, night sweats, even without night sweats, sleep disturbance, irritability and mood irritability. And like you said, metabolism changes and weight gain changes, and just our periods changing overall. So there's a lot that goes into it. I talk to women about this all the time. If you're having normal regular periods and you're in your 40s, mid 40s, late 40s, you're still cycling normally and you're still getting all the natural hormones that you need, except for as we get older, instead of doing this nice gentle menstrual cycle swing with hormones going up and gently coming down and kind of doing that, you're now peaking higher and your valleys are lower. So your range of where you're peaking to where you're dipping is much more significant, and we feel that in the symptoms that are being expressed. So all these things that women are experiencing in that perimenopause phase, it's not in your head, it's actually physiologically what's going on in your body. Your hormones are higher at their peak, and then you tank off and you get lower at your bottom, and you feel that with all of the hot flashes, night sweats, mood irritability, mental fogginess. It just, the list goes on and on. And so I think a lot of people, you get to those ages and you feel kind of out of your body, and you feel like you might be getting a little crazy, but you're not. It's actually physiologically what's happening. And so yeah, there is a real cause for that. And then the transition into menopause, the thing about menopause is it varies so significantly from person to person, of the symptoms that each person feels, to the length that they experience them, to the severity that they experience them, to whether or not we actually have to do something to treat those symptoms. It's a huge spectrum, and you can be on the easiest side of it or you can be on the hardest side of it, and it's all very valid and relevant. So that's where it comes into play of just talking to your doctor about your symptoms, how you're feeling day to day, and seeing if you're a candidate for any of the solutions that we have to offer. But also knowing that if you're doing just fine, you may not need anything. You might just kind of gracefully skate right through and be part of the 10% lucky ones that never have any of those.
The lucky few, that's right.
The 10% lucky few. You could be the good 10% and kind of gracefully just go right through without any significant kind of symptoms, or you can be the bad 10% who has all the worst things and can have symptoms through the age of 70. And like I said, it's a huge spectrum. So just talking to your doctor about how you feel and how you're doing on a day-to-day basis is the most important.
That's great. And if you could just touch on some lifestyle changes or adaptations that might help through this transition period, that would be great for the audience too.
Yeah, I think, it's all the normal stuff that we all know that we should do, that we really just need to be very, very cognizant of during this time. It's making sure that we are active and getting that exercise that we need. And for women getting into the menopausal stage, it's really weight-bearing exercise that's important, because then we start thinking about bone health as your hormones are naturally declining. So you want weight-bearing exercise on your feet, adding resistance, adding weights, to get that weight on your bones to keep them stronger and healthier. So exercise, activity levels, and you want to do at least 5 times a week, 30 minutes a day for that. Then you want to we all want to think about, or don't want to think about diet, but we should. And it's not any sort of specific diet. It really is just getting more plants in your diet, more fruits, more veggies, more natural fiber to get all of those natural nutrients, because we know more plants is better health in many, many different aspects, including menopause and menopausal symptoms. And then aside from that, it really is kind of just the mental and the emotional aspect of it, doing whatever we can in terms of being mindful and being present to help decrease the stress in our lives, decrease the stress that we are experiencing, and overall make sure we have a healthy mindset about everything that we're experiencing. And sometimes that can come from simple things just like daily stress management or daily meditation, or talking to your physician about adding medications and other supplements that might be helpful for that.
That's great. And if only I could incorporate all of the above.
Right, because we have all the time in the world to do it,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. Piece of cake. So I have one last question, and I know there's a lot of things we didn't cover, which we would love to cover on a second webinar. But one other question, sort of unrelated to gynecology per se, what inspired you to use social media such as TikTok and Instagram? It's amazing because it's not very many professionals, medical professionals that do that. What inspired you to do that, to educate women?
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't really think about it for a really long time, and I really just started this social media sort of journey about 1.5 years ago, when I was, or maybe about 2 years ago now, when I was transitioning into a different medical practice. I was leaving the private practice that I was in. I was transitioning to a smaller practice where I was going to do gynecology only, and I really had to think of ways to market myself and to build up a bigger patient base, to kind of attract more attention. And I was brainstorming ways to do this. And my husband says, you know what, you need to get on social media. And I said, oh, okay, I'll create a Facebook page and all that. He goes, Staci, no one's on Facebook anymore. You got to get on Instagram and you got to do these other things. And so I said, okay. And so I decided to explore that. And I found an entire community of physician educators on Instagram, educating people in their fields, combating misinformation and medical misinformation, talking about being a physician and a mother and living that life. And so this huge community of just physician support there kind of really built everything up. And then from there, I watched some of my physician social media colleagues kind of transition to TikTok. And as
Wow, that's
cringy and
great.
as embarrassing as it sounded, I thought about it and I was like, you know what? This is my demographic. This is the demographic that needs me and the knowledge that I have to provide that education on all these topics that are so taboo that no one wants to come right out and ask. So I'm just going to put all of that in their faces so they can see it and then come to my page and me to get all of the reliable information for all of the embarrassing questions that they could ever think of. And it's just kind of organically grown and developed over the past 2 years. And it's become something that I never, ever imagined that it would be. So I never set out specifically to do this. I set out to recruit patients and provide education. And it's just morphed into something so much bigger than that. And I'm just kind of along for the ride and the journey.
Well, you know, that's truly amazing because I know you have a huge following on both and TikTok. So, and kudos to you to bringing all this information out into the general community, the misnomers, the taboo topics. It's truly amazing. So we're going to wrap up with that, but thank you so much, Staci, for being here. I know, like I said, we didn't touch on a lot of topics, but we would love to have you back a second time to touch, maybe go deeper into some of the topics, but thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And I'd be happy to come back and to answer any other questions that your followers might have.
That's great. Thank you.